One of the most important Jedi stories in all of Star Wars is Yoda learning immortality in the Clone Wars. On the surface, it may have seemed like a strange spiritual side quest, but it shows that the Jedi Order, for all its wisdom, discipline, and history, had still lost part of its oldest and deepest spiritual knowledge. When Yoda first hears Qui-Gon Jinn speaking to him from beyond death, the Jedi do not treat it like a forgotten truth returning to them. They treat it like something impossible. The Council is shaken because, in their understanding, a Jedi should not be able to keep their identity after death at all. That means the Order had knowledge of the Force, but not the full knowledge it once may have had. This is what makes this so powerful. Yoda is not just any Jedi, he is the highest Grand Master. If even Yoda does not already know this path, then this is not some small technique the Jedi simply just forgot. This is major spiritual knowledge that had disappeared from the mainstream Jedi tradition. The Force Priestesses do not simply give Yoda a new trick, they help him gain a larger understanding of the Force and teach him how to preserve his identity after death. In other words, this is not just about surviving death, it is about seeing the Force more fully than the Jedi Order had been seeing it. Qui-Gon Jinn is the key to all of this. Qui-Gon is a student of the living Force, someone who trusted instinct, presence, and the will of the Force more than rigid systems and dry rules. That is important because Qui-Gon had always felt a little different from the Council. He was still a Jedi, but he was not completely shaped by the same narrow habits that were taking hold in the later Order. So when the path to immortality returns, it does not come through the Council, it does not come through the Temple hierarchy, it comes through Qui-Gon, the Jedi who was already listening in a deeper way. So the knowledge was not gone because the Force stopped speaking, it was gone because most of the Order had stopped listening the same way. The Force Priestesses make that point even stronger. They embody the connection between the living Force, which exists in living beings, and the larger cosmic Force, which is timeless and greater than any one life. It means Yoda's lesson is not just, here's how to become a ghost. The real lesson is about understanding the relationship between life, death, consciousness, and the Force itself. The Jedi clearly knew much about discipline, meditation, prophecy, and lightsaber combat, but they did not fully understand the deeper bridge between the living world and the cosmic one anymore. The priestesses do. Qui-Gon begins to, Yoda has to relearn it. And the way Yoda learns it is important because the trials prove this knowledge cannot be gained by rank or intellect alone. Yoda faces a dark side version of himself and encounters visions of elusive truths. If he wants to preserve identity after death, he must truly know himself and then let go of that identity. That is the heart of the lesson. Yoda is not being trained to control death. He is being trained to surrender correctly. He must face pride, fear, illusion, and even the darkness inside himself without letting any of it own him. So this is ancient spiritual knowledge rather than a power-up. It is about self-knowledge, humility, and release. This also helps explain what was wrong with the Jedi Order in the prequel era. The Order was not evil, and it was not stupid, but that corruption and complacence were eating away at the Republic and the Jedi. And the Jedi had been pushed into becoming generals in the Clone Wars instead of remaining what they were meant to be at their core. You can feel that in the prequels. The Jedi are wise, but they are also political, cautious, institutional, and buried under the duties of war. They still speak of the Force, but they are increasingly operating like guardians of a system. That is very different from being seekers of its deepest mysteries. So Yoda's journey matters because it shows that the Jedi did not just lose a battle against the Sith in the prequels. In some ways, they had already drifted away from part of their own spiritual center. Without this lost knowledge being recovered, the original trilogy looks very different. In A New Hope, Obi-Wan's body disappears and his voice guides Luke during the Death Star run. In The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, Obi-Wan appears to Luke again in spirit form, and at the end of Return of the Jedi, Yoda and Obi-Wan stand beside the redeemed Anakin as luminous spirits. Qui-Gon guided Yoda through this journey and later taught this lost Lord Obi-Wan as well. So the original trilogy payoff is the result of forgotten teaching being recovered just before the Jedi Order falls. So one of Yoda's greatest strengths is not that he already knows everything, it's that after centuries of mastery, he is still willing to become a student again. Yoda allows himself to be vulnerable and open to learning more. That is what makes him truly wise. A lesser teacher would have rejected the impossible. A more prideful Jedi would have assumed he had nothing left to learn. Yoda does the opposite. He follows the mystery. He accepts that the Force is bigger than the system that taught him. And in doing that, he becomes more complete than the Order he led. So Yoda discovered the Jedi had not reached the end of spiritual truth just because they had a temple, a council, and a code. The Force was always larger than the Order's current understanding of it. Qui-Gon sensed that first. The priestess confirmed it. Yoda had to humble himself enough to receive it. And this also reveals that one of the greatest failures of the Jedi was not only that they were outplayed by the Sith, it was that they had become guardians of tradition, while losing touch with some of the oldest truths the tradition was supposed to protect.